Hi guys, I'm here today to do a review that I don't think is going to end up being a quick review of the Mary L. Tarot. Um, this is a tarot deck that I think I saw on maybe Eclectic or maybe I even Googled it or something, and the first time I saw it I thought, not for me. And then I watched Al Moon's review of it, and I'll link that for you down here so you can also be highly enabled to purchase this deck. And I was just sold by her comments and the things that she showed in the deck. Well, I shouldn't say that. I was kind of intrigued, so I did some more research on it, and the more I did, the more I knew I had to have this deck. And I think that seminal decks don't come along very often, and I think this is a seminal deck, and we'll talk about that here again in just a second. But this review is probably going to end up being pretty lengthy, and for that I apologize, but there's a lot to talk about with this deck, and I actually made notes for this review, and I never make notes for a review, and perhaps I should make them for more, but I'm just really sort of discombobulated by this, and I had to put my thoughts down on paper. And actually, this is really going to be more of a first impressions because I've only had it since Christmas Day, actually, so 2 days. So I really can't do a full review, but I do want to talk about some of the things about it because this deck is it's driving me crazy. So anyway, let me just start with the mundane stuff, okay? Mary L. Tarot. It's by Marie White. It comes in this really fantastic box. The publisher is Schiffer. And on the back, really quickly, it talks about a rare gem suitable for all level of tarot experience. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. Anyway, the box is magnetic, and it has this nice little ribbon here that snaps open. And it's got these lovely ribbons here on the as hinges, so your box doesn't flop shut. The book goes here, like so, and then the cards go here in this well. It's a really nice box. It's a very sturdy box. But I really think these cards deserve a lot more, like a nice wooden box and a nice wrapping and stuff, so they probably won't live in this for, well, they'll live in it until I can find something that I think is really fantastic. It comes with a book called Landscape of the Abyss. It's got the double Ouroboros on it there, and there's a name for that too, and I'm not sure what it's called. My apologies. Anyway, so she starts with an introduction. Geez. Talks about landscapes of the abyss. She talks about the structure of tarot. She has some correspondences, and then it goes through each major arcana, and let's say just for example the High Priestess starts here, continues over to the next page. All of them show, major and minor, show a black and white reproduction of the card, and this one happens to go quite a few pages. And then at the end what she's got is keywords for the meanings to her tarot, reversals, traditional divinatory meanings, and reversal traditional divinatory meanings. So, and that's how it looks for all of them. And they're set up in this book by numbers. So you have the major arcana, then you have the minor, and also, for example, all the twos will be together, all the threes will be together, and then the court cards are at the very back, all together. And it'll make sense when you go through it. And then at the back, she's got readings with tarot, a daily reading spread. I started doing that today. This is really interesting, actually. And she talks in here about if you do this daily reading like this, quote, it says, "It's a lot like learning a musical instrument. At first it takes a lot of effort and concentration, and then one day the music just flows from you. The instrument becomes simply an extension of your body and your will to make music. You stop focusing on the tool and begin directing the output, and that comes with use." So that's really neat. So it's a 3-card spread that you can do the evening before or that day. And it tells you a little bit about it, and obviously it's just a 1, 2, 3 card spread. There are a couple more spreads in here. Conclusion, small bibliography, in notes, and then about the author in the back. The book is actual text, text that's not bibliography and such, is 186 pages. There's a couple of pages of bibliography. So it's a very extensive book. It's also very well made. The publisher of this is Schiffer. I don't know how many other decks they have. I've never had a deck by Schiffer, but it's a really well made deck and book together. I don't like the orientation of the book. I don't see why it couldn't have gone this way because it's just a little bit more unwieldy, I think, to hold. But the book is really well made. As you can see, there are signatures inside that, and there are places where this book is sewn as well. You can also see that I've been reading it like crazy in the last couple of days. So the book is really well made. It doesn't lie flat, but it's easy to kind of pull back and take a look at it. The binding or the spine is not breaking at all. And like I said, you can see it's seen some heavy duty use in the last couple of days. So very high quality fingerprint magnet though. But anyway, so that's the book to it. The cards, this is the backing. They have that double Ouroboros. They're also highly laminated. Look, you can actually see the reflection of me doing the video. And it has its strengths and weaknesses. I don't mind the high lamination, but what that means for these cards is that they're very sticky to shuffle. So you might want to take, I've seen blog posts where people have taken a little bit of talcum powder or something and kind of put in between them so that they shuffle more easily. It may not bother you, but it might. Size-wise, I did not get anything else out to show you the size. So totally my bad. And I have nothing here. It's larger than a standard tarot deck. I don't know why I'm yelling. Those are my hands. It's pretty difficult to shuffle. It's a fairly thick deck. And as you can see, I'm tapping them on my computer, but you have kind of a hard time getting them back together because of that lamination. It's a fairly thick deck. The cardstock is fantastic. The cardstock is very thick. Very nice. They have the black borders, which you can see that border is not even. I didn't even notice that. I really don't notice the borders bad on this until I lay several out at a time to look at, and I really, just like every other tarot deck, believe that this deck would be even more fantastic than it already is if it not had borders. Now these are such that you could cut them off, and actually this deck is so amazing, I would recommend picking up a couple copies of this, and if you decided to do that, then it would be nothing to cut off the borders on one of your decks and then leave them intact on the other deck. There are a couple cards, though, that are very dark, so it would be harder to trim off the borders, so my suggestion is either go outside to do it where you can see in the sunlight, or under a very strong reading lamp where you can see. Although, as you can see, there's a horrible reflection, so, you know, just be careful and take your time. You certainly don't want to wreck this deck because it's amazing. So the cards are a little bit larger. And let me take a look at my notes here really quickly. The box is okay. It's certainly better than anything that U.S. Game Systems or Los Scarabeo for sure puts out. Better than most of Llewellyn's offerings. But this deck really begs, like I said, for a nice box and maybe a wooden box or something. Borders, but you know, at least they're black. They're not. Thank God they didn't go with white. That would have just been a travesty. But it would be a good deck for trimming, like I was saying. And then the cardstock is heavy, but they're a little bit difficult to shuffle, again, because it's so laminated, and the cards are bigger than regular tarot card, or, you know, sort of standard tarot card size. Here's one, actually, just lying about. This is the Legend Arthurian Tarot, and you can see the size difference. And this is about the size of a standard Llewellyn size deck. So you can see that the image, gosh dang it, the image is about the size of a standard tarot deck, and then you add the borders to it. So again, if you have smaller hands, or just because the images are so stunning, this deck is so amazing, it would be brilliant trimmed. And as a matter of fact, on the author's website, she has a deck that she's trimmed, and it's amazing. The book, let me go back a little bit. The book can be a bit vague with some of the explanations. I tend to prefer a straightforward deck. This is the meaning. This is what it is. And like I talked about, I think in a previous video, symbolism does not come naturally to me, and so deciphering symbolism doesn't come naturally to me. I think I talked about that in one of those comparative tarot videos where I talked about Rachel Pollack's 78 Degrees of Wisdom really not being one of my favorite tarot books because it's kind of ethereal and just so heavy with symbolism that it, to me, is a little esoteric, and I tend to prefer things that are more straightforward and straight up, and this is what it is. And this book is not that. This book is very similar to Rachel Pollack in that the symbolism is very heavy in this deck and in this book. And let me just go through about some of the symbolism that just in the last couple of days that I read. That there is heavy Bible symbolism. If you're not versed in Bible mythology, biblical mythology, you might want to give it a read. Greek, Roman, Norse, Sumerian, Persian, Buddhist, Christian and Jewish mysticism, Grail, lore, Arthurian, legend, Egyptian, Chinese, very heavy numerology, and heavy into animal symbolism. I think that if you're not a big reader, and by that I mean a reader, and you have not read things like epic things like Plato, Dante, there are quotes in here from Plato, Dante, Hafiz, Virgil, Rumi, Joseph Campbell. There's a lot of the symbolism is from the Kabbalah. I talked about Jewish mysticism, and then Greek and Roman mythology. And if you're not particularly well versed in those, you're going to have a little more difficulty, I think, with this deck. And I think this deck may not be the best for reading for others, but it would be it's amazing at what it is. And I think the where it really excels is deepening your study of tarot and symbolism. So let's take a look at a little bit at it, and then I'll go over what I think, and then who I think this deck would be for, and who I think this deck is not really for. After Al Moon's review, I knew this was a heavier tarot deck, but I really was not prepared for the epicness of it, and I was really not prepared for it to just grab me like it has. This is on the scale of epic, like the Iliad is epic, and I have to tell you that I think the Iliad is probably the most perfect story ever. It has everything. I love the Iliad. I reread it fairly regularly, and it's fantastic. And this deck is sort of on that. It's not a deck where the author took Rider-Waite-Smith imagery and symbolism, or Crowley and Lady Frida Harris symbolism, or Marseille symbolism, and redid it and tacked on a theme. It is completely redone, and it will completely blow your mind. And it is heavy, heavy duty. So, that said, now, before I show these cards, understand that there is some male nudity, and I don't say that by way of warning, because for me, nudity is nudity. But I'm going to show you a couple of those, and I really love that, because if you're gonna, I don't understand why female nudity is ubiquitous and male nudity is such a, a rare thing. I really don't care one way or the other that there's nudity in my deck. I don't have issues with it. It is what it is, and but I find that when somebody takes the time, an artist takes the time to be an equal opportunity shower of things, that I find that really refreshing, because then you have the duality that really should be in a deck. And I think when you just include one or the other, then you're really missing the boat in terms of overweighing your deck with some energy or another energy. It's sort of like decks where everybody's female or everybody's male. Those are not my favorite either, because the energy then is so heavy toward one side or the other, and I love it when they balance decks. And this is balanced, and it's amazing. So this is the King of Discs. The artwork is very different. If you're not used to it, or it doesn't, I think this is one of those decks where it's like, or oh, or you're very visceral, like, or just very repulsed. I don't think there's a middle ground, like, I don't think there's a middle ground, sort of like well, I don't know, I'm not really sure. I think you're going to be sure. When you look at the images, you're going to say, oh, that's really interesting, or, oh, hell no, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't think there's going to be an in-between. This is the Fool card. Those, if you can't see them well, are dragons. It explains in the book the symbology of the dragons. I don't remember. And, of course, monarch butterflies. The Hanged Man. This one's a very different feel to the rest of the deck. These colors don't predominate, I don't think, at least not in many of the other cards, if any. Emperor. And I don't have any like favorites in this deck, or any that I really just detest. I think they're all just fairly equally fascinating, with the exception of one. I've talked about in other videos how I hate the Hierophant, except in this deck, because it is the best version of a Hierophant ever done. I don't care what you say. I don't care how disturbing you find that. I think it's bloody fantastic. This is the World. Isn't that amazing? I think it is. I think it's beautiful. Queen of Wands. And then I talked about a little bit earlier the numerology being really important, and I'm going to show you how that works out. Because in the book and in the deck and in the symbology, she connects all of the same numbers together. So, like, all of the 4s are going to be similar, all of the 5s, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to show you the 5s together. So here is the 5 of Cups and 5 of Wands. And you can see these 2 different animals. I'm not going to go through the symbology of those here. But what I want to show you, I wanted to show you these so that I could show you these, because this is so damn cool. And it took me, I saw this one first, and then I had to rummage through the deck to find the other one so I could understand. So this is the 5 of Swords. And I'm looking at, you know, Athena's owl here, and I'm looking at her face, and I'm looking down here at the baby, and then I see this grasped hand that goes off the card. Do you see how she's holding someone else's hand that's off the card? That's because it's this guy's hand in the 5 of Discs. That's probably the wrong way around. Anyway, the book describes this. It talks about it, how they're connected, and why. And I felt kind of dumb, I guess, because it's probably something I should have known about and didn't. But when I found it, it was like angels saying, right? I was so amazed by it. So all the numbers are connected just like that. This deck is going to have a lasting impact on the tarot community. I think it'll have a lasting impact on every reader who looks at it and says, oh, I want that. If you like it and you buy it, it will have a lasting impact on you. Whether you're relatively new to reading or you've been reading for years, or whether you're very well versed in symbolism or you're not. It's one of those, it's just a seminal deck. This deck is deep. It's somewhat odd. It's beautiful. It's somewhat scary in parts of it and parts of the book. I was really kind of disturbed, and maybe you won't be. And I don't mean scary as in horror movie scary at all. Just kind of I don't know how to clarify that. It can be dark. It can be a little creepy. It's fascinating. It's very frustrating to me, and you can tell maybe by the tone of the video that I'm really discombobulated by this thing. It's absolutely one of a kind. It's indirect in the way of being so deep with symbolism and so just rich with symbolism, so fertile. It's disturbing. It has disturbed me. I'm really, like I said, bothered by it. It's mysterious, but it's incredibly rewarding. This deck is not superfluous. It's not light. It's not easy to interpret, and it's not direct. And the book is not going to be particularly helpful if you like that light, fast, direct meanings. And if you are into those, what I suggest is a little book called The Only Tarot Book You'll Ever Need. It's not, but it's a really good book if you're into something more like that. But that's not this deck, okay? Who I think this deck is for? Collectors. If you're a tarot collector, if you're a student of tarot, you collect decks, or you just like different artwork, I think it's a not miss. I think you need to pick it up, and I think we're going to see in the next few years through Eclectic and through other tarot forums and the tarot community here on YouTube and other places that this deck is going to be, if it's not Deck of the Year already, it should be. I anticipate it being the Deck of the Decade, I would guess. So if you collect, if you love 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollack and you think it's the best tarot book ever written, you're going to like this deck. I think it's for intermediate to advanced tarot students, and you really need to be steeped in some mythology. If you're not, you're really going to be missing a lot. If you can't, you know how as we get older, we've read so much and we've learned so much about other things that then our database starts getting more full, and we start making more connections and different connections with things we've read in the past, mythologies that we've learned from different places, other tarot decks that we've learned from, tarot books that we've learned from, movies even, and we can start connecting those things into more of a cohesive whole. So I think it's really more for an intermediate to advanced student. If you're a beginner and it turns your crank, by all means buy it. It just might be a steeper learning curve. But I think that the people that we get the most out of it are people who already are in love with tarot and who are actual students of tarot, not just, I have 60 tarot decks because I collect the art. I think really the art is fantastic, but I think you'll get the most out of it if you are an actual like student of tarot, like you actually study tarot. Those who love mythology, if you already love mythology or you're fascinated by the Kabbalah, Jewish and Christian mysticism, if you just love mythology, you're going to enjoy this. And readers, people who, and I guess really if you're a student of tarot, you're probably a reader anyway. So I'm probably saying the same thing, talking to the same group of people. And by reader, I mean a reader of books, and I don't mean just the latest novel off the shelf. I mean books like I talked about before, the Iliad, the Odyssey, works by Plato, the Aeneid, the Divine Comedy, things like that. Because those are the things that you would really need to understand some of the deep symbolism here. This deck may not be for beginners. It might not be. I don't want to tell you, because as soon as you tell somebody this ain't for you, the first thing you're going to want to do is run out and get it right. And I don't mean it to sound like that, but I really think that I really don't think this would be the best first deck. Might not even be the best second or third deck. It might be. You might be in love with it. Those with no interest in Kabbalah, if you are have no interest in Kabbalah, no interest in numerology or deep symbology, really you might want to pass on it. Specifically Rider-Waite-Smith devotees. If you love the Rider-Waite-Smith system and that's all you use and all your decks are similar, they all use that system. The Aleister Crowley deck gives you the willies. You've never used it. You don't understand the symbolism in it. This might not be for you. And then those who don't enjoy or read mythology, because really to get the most out of it, you're going to have to understand mythology and you're going to have to be making those connections. Unless the artwork just really turns your crank and you love the artwork and you just want it because of that, because it's certainly fantastic because of that. So anyway, those are my first impressions. It's not really a review because I haven't used it long enough to really review it. And I hope it didn't sound as fractured as it felt, but I think the deck is amazing. I've actually, last night I had been going through it and I had reading the book for hours and hours, and I was looking at other decks and I was thinking about sort of pulling something out just to be refreshed a little bit, to take off some of the, I was looking for something not quite so meaty, just something a little bit lighter that I could reconnect with, just kind of put myself back on a more even keel, and I had no desire to pull anything else out because I think for a while, at least, everything else to me would be really sort of a letdown, really sort of disappointing. And I don't mean that the way it sounds, because I have some really beautiful decks and some really wonderful decks, and certainly valid in their own and wonderful in their own right, but I really can't tell you enough times how different and how stunning and how deep and amazing and I don't want to say life-changing because maybe it's not quite that epic. Depending on how much of a student of tarot you are, perhaps it is or isn't, but yeah, it's a really neat thing. So I'll be back. I know it was really long, certainly for our first impressions. If you have any questions, holler at me. I'd love to enter a discussion with you about this deck if you have it, or you're feeling the same way, or perhaps you're better at it than understanding it than I am, or it hasn't been quite as discombobulating for you. But especially if it has, because I would really love to know your experiences with this, and if you felt the same way, sort of like almost as soon as you unwrapped it, then all of a sudden you were on shifting sands and really not sure where you stood with it, or tarot in general, or and if it leaves you feeling just that unnerved kind of feeling, I guess is the best way to describe it. I would love to discuss that with you. So anyway, I'm going to let you go. If you're still with me, bless your heart. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.